Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are going to take a really detailed visual tour of two of the most dynamic and honestly fascinating structures in our entire body, the tongue and the palate. So let's dive right in. But before we properly get started, I've got a little brain teaser for you. Think about this. What is the only muscle in the human body that's attached at just one end? Tuck that question away in the back of your mind. We'll definitely be coming back to it. So, a huge welcome to Visual Depict Med. For anyone new here, our whole mission is to take these really complex, sometimes intimidating medical topics and just break them down into clear, engaging, and animated visuals. You know, our goal is to make learning this stuff feel intuitive and maybe even a little unforgettable. Whether you're a med student cramming for an exam or you're just curious about how this incredible machine we call the body actually works. Today, we're zoning in on the amazing anatomy of the tongue and palate. Okay, let's kick things off with our grand tour of the tongue's surface. And trust me, it is so much more than just a muscle. It's this highly specialized muscular organ that is absolutely essential for taste, for speech, for swallowing, pretty much the first and most critical steps of digestion. So if you take a look right here, you can see the tongue is kind of divided into two main geographical areas. The part up front, which makes up about 2/3 of it, is the oral or buccal portion. That's the supermobile part that you can see inside your mouth. And then, tucked way back, is the posterior 1/3, known as the pharyngeal portion. This part is a lot more fixed in place and actually makes up the front wall of your oropharynx. Now check this out, because this is the really cool part. See that V-shaped groove? That's the landmark that separates those two regions we just talked about. It's called the sulcus terminalis. And right at the very tip of that V, there's a little pit called the foramen caecum. Now that's not just some random dimple. It is a critical leftover from when we were developing as embryos. It marks the exact spot where the thyroid gland started its journey down into the neck. How cool is that? A little piece of our own developmental history right there in our mouths. Now, the top surface of the tongue, the dorsum, isn't smooth at all, right? It's got that classic rough texture, and that's because it's covered in thousands of these tiny little bumps called papilla. Let's get a closer look. Just in front of that V-shaped sulcus terminalis, you'll see a row of these large circular ones. Those are the vallate papilla. Think of them as the big guys. Then you have these smaller mushroom-shaped ones called fungiform papillae scattered all over the place. And both of these are absolutely crucial because they're the ones that house our taste buds. Okay, let's flip the tongue over and see what's going on underneath. Right down the middle, you've got the frenulum. That's the little fold of tissue that anchors the tongue to the floor of the mouth. And if you look on either side, you can often see these deep lingual veins. The only reason we can see them is because the lining here, the mucosa, is so incredibly thin. A little to the side of those veins, you'll find these delicate fringed folds called the plica fimbriata. And right at the base of the frenulum, we'll have the openings for the submandibular ducts. This is basically a major gateway for saliva to enter the mouth. So how in the world does the tongue pull off all of its incredible acrobatics? You know, curling, flattening, sticking straight out? Well, the secret is in its incredibly complex system of muscles. This is the engine room, and it powers everything from speaking clearly to swallowing your food. And, yep, if you guessed the tongue far opening question, you were absolutely right. Okay, so the muscles are split into two main groups. First up, we've got the intrinsic muscles. Their fibers start and end completely inside the tongue itself. You can think of these as the tongue's shapeshifters. They're what allow you to make your tongue long and skinny or short and fat. Then you've got the extrinsic muscles. These guys actually start on bones outside the tongue, like the mandible, and then they reach in and attach to it. These are the movers and shakers. They're responsible for changing the tongue's position, pulling it back, pushing it forward, and moving it all around. We've got 4 pairs of these powerhouse extrinsic muscles, and each one has a very specific job. So let's take a look at them one by one. We're going to really zoom in here so you can see exactly where each muscle comes from and what it does. Let's kick things off with the genioglossus. As we get a closer look, you can see it's this huge fan-shaped muscle that starts right at the front of the mandible. Its main job? To protrude the tongue, which basically means to stick it out. This muscle is so important, and as we're going to see in our clinical section, just testing its function can tell you a whole lot about a patient's neurological health. Now, trying to remember all 4 extrinsic muscles can be a bit tricky, especially for exams. So here's a great little mnemonic for you. Gotta have strong palates. That stands for genioglossus, hyoglossus, styloglossus, and palatoglossus, a really useful tool to just keep in your back pocket. All right, so we've explored the tongue, which is like the floor of the mouth. Now let's look up at its neighbor and partner, the palate. The palate is literally the roof of your mouth, and it has the critical job of separating our oral cavity from our nasal cavity. This is absolutely vital for breathing, eating, and speaking clearly. And just like the tongue, the palate is also a two-part structure. The front two-thirds is what we call the hard palate, and it's called hard for a simple reason. It's got a bony skeleton. Then behind that, you've got the posterior one-third, which is the soft palate. This part is a mobile, muscular flap, and as you'll see, it's incredibly dynamic. Okay, this is a really important distinction to understand. The soft palate is covered in a standard mucous membrane, but the hard palate is covered by something really unique called mucoperiosteum. So what is that? It's a special kind of tissue where the mucous membrane is literally fused directly to the periosteum. That's the connective tissue that covers the bone. This fusion makes the covering of the hard palate super tough and immovable, which is perfect for withstanding all the pressure from chewing. And if you look right here, you get a great view of the back end of the soft palate. It has this free border that hangs down, and right there in the middle, it ends in that familiar little dangling structure, the uvula. On either side, the soft palate forms these arches that we call the pillars of the fauces. And nestled right between those pillars are the palatine tonsils, which are key players in our immune system. All right, so this is all fascinating anatomy, but how does it actually apply in the real world, in a clinical setting? Let's connect all this knowledge to a patient scenario that perfectly shows why knowing this stuff is so important. So imagine this. A patient walks into your clinic. You ask them to do a simple task. Stick your tongue out for me. But when they do, you notice it doesn't come out straight. Instead, it drifts. It points off to their left side. That one simple physical sign is a massive clue that points directly to a very specific neurological issue. So the million-dollar question is, which nerve is probably damaged here? Let's think back for a second. The main muscle that sticks the tongue out is the genioglossus, right? And that's controlled by the hypoglossal nerve. Now, here's how it works. The genioglossus on the right side pushes the tongue forward and to the left. The one on the left pushes it forward and to the right. When they both fire together, they balance each other out perfectly and the tongue shoots straight out. But if the left hypoglossal nerve is damaged, that left genioglossus muscle gets weak. Now, the healthy right muscle is working all on its own, completely unopposed. So it overpowers the weak side and pushes the tongue towards the injured left side. So the golden rule here is, the tongue always points towards the side of the nerve lesion. Fantastic! You see, you just used basic anatomy to diagnose a potential nerve lesion. That's awesome. Now, let's make sure all this information really sticks with a quick review and a couple of practice questions. Okay, first question for you. Small glands are scattered throughout the submucosa of the tongue's dorsum. These are mostly serous up front and mostly mucus. Where? Is it A, laterally, B, medially, C, posteriorly, or D, inferiorly? Take about 5 seconds to think about it. The correct answer is C, posteriorly. The glands in the front secrete a thin, watery fluid, while the ones in the back secrete a much thicker mucus fluid. All right, question number 2. Which of the following best describes the covering of the hard palate? Is it A, mucous membrane, B, mucoperiosteum, C, serous membrane, or D, just stratified squamous epithelium? I'll give you another 5 seconds. And if you were paying close attention earlier, you'll know the answer is B, mucoperiosteum. Remember, that's that special tough lining where the mucosa is fused right onto the bone's covering. All right, let's wrap this up with a final rapid-fire recap of the absolute must-know points. First, the tongue is divided by the sulcus terminalis. Second, the foramen caecum marks the origin of the thyroid gland. Third, extrinsic muscles move the tongue, while intrinsic muscles change its shape. Fourth, a hypoglossal nerve lesion makes the tongue point to the same side as the injury. And finally, the hard palate is bony and tough, while the soft palate is muscular and mobile. Got it? Good. And there you have it. That was our deep dive into the anatomy of the tongue and palate. I really hope this visual study guide helped make these complex structures a little bit clearer for you. If you found this useful, please do us a huge favor and show your support by liking this explainer, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell. And definitely let us know in the comments what topics you'd like to see us break down next. Thanks for watching Visual Depicts Med.